Welcome to the BuiltOnAir podcast, the variety show for all things Airtable. In each episode, we cover 4 different segments. It's always fresh and different, and lots of fun while you get the insider info on all things Airtable. Our hosts and guests are some of the most senior experts in the Airtable community. Join us live each week on our YouTube channel every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern, and join our active community at BuiltOnAir.com. Before we begin, a word from our sponsor, On2Air Backups. On2Air Backups provides automated Airtable backups to your cloud storage for secure and reliable data protection. Prevent data loss and set up a secure Airtable backup system with On2Air Backups at On2Air.com. As one customer, Sarah, said, having automated Airtable backups has freed up hours of my time every other week and the fear of losing anything. Longtime customer David states, On2Air Backups might be the most critical piece of the puzzle to guard against unforeseeable disaster. It's easy to set up, and it just works. Join Sarah, David, and hundreds more Airtable users like you to protect your Airtable data with On2Air Backups. Sign up today with promo code BuiltOnAir for a 10% discount. Check them out at On2Air.com. And now let's check out today's episode and see what we built on air.
Welcome into the BuiltOnAir podcast. We are in season 24, episode 4. Sounds like we've got 5 of us joining today. So we've got myself, Ali, Camille, and special guest Lisa. Welcome, Lisa. And she's got her little baby with us that's going to join as well. So good to have you. So Lisa's going to showcase some a fun application that she built on Airtable and presented in the recent hackathon. I'm going to walk us through how that all came together. So we'll hear from Lisa in a second. But before we begin, updates, any updates? I was going through the upcoming Airtable events. There is a new feature spotlight today. It may have already happened in its British time zone. So yeah, I think that might have already happened. But there's also the Airspace LA coming up in a couple weeks. I believe Camille's going to be there.
Yep.
In her backyard.
I almost decided to go, but I'm going to be in LA on May 12th. Like I arrived there that day, but I'm going to visit my brother and decided I'll do the family time.
Can't believe you would choose your brother over Airtable.
I know, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, a couple other upcoming events. No feature releases. Since we chatted last time, we went through all the recent ones. The one that I look back at, talking about the Claude MCP integration. You know what I was realizing, it was showing all the tools that you can use in there. And there are certain tools that are only available in the MCP that are not available in the API. Let me look at that.
Because that was my fear, was that it was only going to do API related actions. Well, it's not that hard to build an Airtable integration. I do it all the time, but there's certain limitations in the API. If Claude can do more than what the publicly available API endpoints allow for, then that kind of opens up quite a few possibilities. So I'm curious to see what skills are not available.
My browser is acting up right now. I can't get to, I don't know why it's not loading. But yeah, if you pull up or just Google Airtable MCP and find a list of the tools.
Yeah, let's see.
There we go. Now I'm back up. Let's see here. Okay, which one did I? Maybe
Get insights. Let's see that these are just a general list.
Yeah, all the ones on their main page. Maybe it's just in the Claude. I'll double check that and show next week.
Oh, wait, I found it. It's in Airtable's documentation. Create table, create field, update table, update field, create records for table, get table schema. Let's see.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at, and I'm not seeing what I saw last time. So
yeah,
keep looking. Maybe that was somewhere else that I saw it.
maybe the GitHub.
Possibly, or it might have been on Claude's marketplace. Anyways, we can move on. So, but yeah, that was something I'll look into and see how that. Yeah, because that, like Camille said, like that's my fear as well. Is like hopefully anything they add, they also make available in the REST API. You don't have a secret backdoor, so. Cool. So yeah, we talked about a couple of weeks ago. We went through the entries to the hackathon, and a lot of amazing stuff. We thought it'd be cool to have one of the entries come on and showcase what they built. And I know Lisa came on. We had kind of a in between when we were off from our season. We had a help session, and I know Lisa came on and showed what you were working on. So that was cool to see. So now we're gonna check out our application built around Friends. So if you're a fan of Friends, you'll like this. So there it is up on the screen. I don't know if you're available, Lisa.
I am. I'm so sorry. Of course, my 2-month-old was asleep in a nap right up until we had to come on. So hopefully he'll be quiet. But apologies for the side crying here. But thank you everyone for letting me join today. And there's that burp, sorry. Excited to be here to talk about Friends with Airtable, which is the role-playing game that I created for the March's community hackathon, Airtable Hackathon. And I decided to join the hackathon really for 3 reasons. One, because obviously I love Airtable. And I haven't used their Omni app yet quite deeply. And so I thought maybe I'd take this opportunity to kind of explore a little bit. And I just happened to be on maternity leave. So it's kind of like this all aligned in terms of opportunity and timing. And so I was excited and the Let's Play theme was a really fun idea. I think, Allie, you guys were all involved in coming up with that. So I was really intrigued by that. So I'll talk about, I thought maybe what I was thinking was I'll kind of talk about like how I decided on making this particular app, and then talk about like how I actually made the app. Would that be interesting, or do you want me to just kind of dive into the back end of this app?
No, I want to hear the backstory.
And maybe before you jump into that, give some context on how long you've been using Airtable, what kind of work you do, things like that about you.
Sure. I am currently an operations manager for an innovation team at Link Logistics, which is America's largest industrial real estate company. I just started in January, so please don't ask me anything about what that is. I'm still learning myself. But I previously worked at IDEA, which is like a global design consulting firm, the Lactation Network, and New England Conservatory. So I come from various industries, but my role has always been in designing the operational backbone of teams and developing managing programs. And I met Airtable. I like to talk about Airtable like we're in a relationship. When I worked at IDEO back in 2021. And the team that I was a part of at the time was just kind of really using it as a basic project intake spreadsheet, glorified spreadsheet. But then we had to use like multiple systems to actually complete the workflow, which was assigning designers onto projects. And of course, everyone thinks, okay, there's got to be a better way. And because we were already using Airtable, I decided to binge watch YouTubes of all the Airtable things. and discovered that I can do more than just this grid view, and interface launched that following year. So the timing there aligned really well as well. And I ended up being able to consolidate our system into this one centralized Airtable workflow and use interface so that the rest of our company could kind of use it in their own way based off of the data that we had. So that was my introduction to Airtable. Unfortunately, ever since IDEO, I haven't had the chance to use Airtable at any of the other companies yet. I've always tried to implement, I've at least planted the seed there of like Airtable exists. So we'll see if that ever blossoms in any of those places. But that's always been always like a wish list for me to work at a place where Airtable might be welcomed and explored. And so I've been a little bit out, at least professional, like in my day-to-day work of using Airtable since 2023, but started to use it, but I missed it so much. I just was like, okay, I'm going to start using it personally, figure out how to keep using it. So I kind of use it to manage my finances at the moment. But I'm hoping as I return from my maternity leave that maybe that's a conversation I can have at this new company as well. So always front and center for me to explore how Airtable can be introduced, which is kind of the reason why I also came to this idea of Friends with Airtable. But that's a little bit about me.
Cool.
Okay, so Friends with Airtable, how I came to it, I kind of mentioned it. So one of the things I love doing in my current role of like designing operations that naturally comes with new processes are implemented, new tools are implemented. So that leads to leading training sessions. I have a background in classical music, and I started my career in managing music education programs. And I also grew up in a household where my mother was a at-home piano teacher. So teaching has always been kind of part of my life. But I'm continuously trying to improve and develop my approach in enablement. So this community hackathon just came up right in that perfect timing of me thinking about like how does play a role in enablement. So I thought I'd take that opportunity to think about, okay, well, if I wanted to introduce Airtable, because in this recent year since I left IDEO, I would ask, my managers, my company, my colleagues, like, have you heard of Airtable? And I haven't really found anyone who knew what Airtable was, which was really surprising to me because I'm in this bubble of Airtable fans. I thought everyone knew what Airtable was. And so it made me think about, okay, well, if I wanted to introduce Airtable more to new users or help new users onboard to Airtable quickly, how can I do that in a playful way? So that was like one of the questions I was trying to answer. And then also just some selfish opportunity for me to explore AI that Airtable has been developing in their apps. So with that, I actually, when I was at IDEO, I had a colleague who talked to me about the intentional design around Super Mario, which is that with every, like the run and jump game of Super Mario, and you learn from the very first interface where you learn that to move forward, you have to click the right arrow, and then eventually on the screen it shows a little block that you realize that you have to jump to get on there, and then so at that moment you discover that you need to push the up button to jump or the space button, whatever it is, and so this idea of that intentional progressive teaching really stuck with me. Is like, oh, that game was set up and designed in a way where you intentionally are learning one thing at a time, and then eventually you're building all those skills, using all those different techniques that you learned to then become the master of playing that game. And that was very intriguing. And so let me see if you can, started with that concept. Like, what if I taught Airtable through this like run and jump game? So my initial concept was like, okay, I'll just create, we'll run, jump, you'll climb on these ladders, and you'll hit enter and start a challenge. So the challenges themselves were all the same. For those of you who haven't seen my RPG one, it's like there are 3 different challenges or missions with various challenges. You're trying to complete this challenge, and within that challenge, you're learning a little bit about Airtable. And so that's how I had set up this game initially, about like a run and jump game. But then what I started to realize was that with this run and jump game, these challenges were becoming like almost like the enemy or like the blocker of you trying to complete the game. The focus of the game was really trying to get through, this to the end of the mission of the screen. And these were starting to look more like blockers. And I didn't like that mindset of seeing these challenges, which are meant to be like learning opportunities, to be seen as blockers. So it made me think about, well, what kind of game makes you want to seek out or to look forward to finding these challenges and accomplish, like that's the main goal of the game, rather it being kind of like the distraction of the main goal. And that's how I ended up with the role-playing game. I actually never really played one. I never had a Game Boy growing up, so I never really experienced one myself. But I think I had a somewhat of a concept of what that was. And so I kind of designed it around, as Dan mentioned, I'm also a huge fan of Friends. So I thought that would be fun to kind of have a companion to learn Airtable with alongside. So like if you're a Friends fan, there are 6 friends and they each kind of have a very distinct personality. So based on that, I created these avatars. And then it's a very, very simple RPG. It's not, as fancy as some of those pixelated versions out there, but a basic one that I was able to create here. And essentially there are 3 locations you could explore: the Central Perk Cafe, Monica's apartment, and Joey's apartment. In each of those locations, there's a challenge, a mission that you're completing. And within those mission, 3 challenges. I'm going to pause there for a minute to see if there are any questions. But that's kind of initially how I ended up with choosing an RPG game for my design.
I mean, I just love the way you thought about it. Sorry. I might have a delay.
I'm sorry. I was just reminding the audience that you can find Lisa's explanation video for the contest on YouTube, as well as all of the other submissions. It gives a nice deep dive into the app. I'm sure we're going to get one, but just,
Yeah, I'll post the link to it in the chat as well.
Yeah. Also wanted to mention Lisa actually won one of the awards with this, which was awesome. Congratulations. And I love the way you described thinking about that. I'm also a big fan of Super Mario. And Mario 64, I think, is the one that it teaches you like that in the beginning. And I know exactly what you're talking about. And it's really helpful. And I also thought it was interesting how, like, you thought a lot about the psychology of the game, like thinking about those things, blockers rather than part of the game, or like what you actually want the game to do. So I don't know. I admire that chain of thought. It was pretty cool.
Thank you. Yeah, I was never a video game person growing up, so it felt weird to be creating a video game without that knowledge, but it was really fun. And just, again, this was an opportunity for me to explore what Omni could do. And I just had no idea that Omni could do this. And I think, I'm trying to remember, there must have been some kind of inspiration that I saw. Maybe it was something Mike shared, Simmons shared, but I was like, oh, you can do, or maybe even it was this community hackathon. And I was looking at like previous entries from last year. And I was like, oh, you could, I didn't really think about making a game using Airtable. Airtable's meant for work or spreadsheet, something, or data organized. And so that was a whole new shift in how I saw data as well, and how I saw what Airtable could do as a tool. So I was really excited to dive into using Omni, which is really what I used for building this game. And I know when I joined you guys during that office hour, at that time when I was initially only trying to build using Omni. And so I didn't do any like previous database setup, and I wasn't really thinking of using Claude as not either. So I was just trying to see how much I can get done with, I was just having like a back and forth conversation with Omni throughout the night to create something. But I think I mentioned this in that episode as well, but where I was hitting a brick wall was that there were just so many, I was able to like create Monica's apartment and its challenges, for example. but then I was having trouble duplicating that for the other two in the same way. And I was having to like do one at a time because I didn't want to overwhelm Omni with create this entire thing. So that was one of my takeaways was what you guys actually offered as a tip in that call was build the data first in the base and then have that to reference Omni to, so that Omni can then build off of that into like the visualization. So it took me even just to get to that visualization, like three days of back and forth. But then after that call, I just scratched everything and started again. And it literally took me like a couple of hours to just get to this, like getting all three built out. So I was like, wow, that was much faster. So just to take you back here to the data I was talking about, what I initially built out, which I didn't before, and this is where also Claude came in to kind of help me brainstorm ideas and write all these like descriptions. So I came up with the different missions and the challenges. So for the theme, for those of you interested and aren't familiar with the game, in Monica's apartment, Monica's trying to host Thanksgiving. In Joey's apartment, Joey's trying to figure out his auditions for acting roles. And then in the Central Perk, Ross is hosting a trivia night. So those are the three like missions where you as a player is pulled in to help organize all of those. And these are the different challenges that come with it. And then for each of those challenges, there were some data that you needed to have to support those challenges. And so I had this for Monica's mission, for hosting Thanksgiving, you'll need a guest list, you'll need dishes to be assigned. So those are the database that I created using Omni. Similarly for Ross's mission, which was again hosting a trivia night, you'll need people who are participating, what team they're on, and then the different questions and how many points each of those questions are worth. And then let's see, the trivia, that's less important, but a trivia category. So those are the database that I created for that one. And then for Joey's mission, it was just literally the list of auditions that he had to complete. So that's kind of what I already established my base with initially before even creating the custom interface. But once that was set, then I went to the interface and asked Omni to build out. And again, I used Claude to help me kind of fine tune the prompt writing for that initial build. But build out that ask of, hey, I want to try to create this RPG. I even added a screenshot of another RPG game that I liked visually. It's kind of copied this style. And then it coded, right? And turned into this. And I'll kind of show you, you'll enter into Central Perk. There are, furnitures around and you walk up to that character and I'll ask you, ask you for your help. And then you start your mission. And then this kind of goes into my next layer of interface. My design here, the game design, is I was trying to, because one of my goals is for this new user onto Airtable to kind of start familiarizing with what Airtable could do and kind of think about, kind of help them click oh, okay, Airtable can help me think different, see data differently, organize in a way that would be turned into an actionable insight. And so I was trying to simulate Airtable as much as possible in the actual challenges. But obviously it's not perfect. It's not one-to-one. It's not exactly Airtable. But this was meant to be did you know, Airtable has forms that you can create. And this is where you can build out the form or complete the form. And then you have to actually do two. So let me go ahead and put that in there. And then you'll complete a challenge. And then here, of course, this always happens on a live stream.
Yep.
Sorry, everyone. I'm going to choose. I'm going to go to Monica's apartment here. And then. So you can see here, Airtable basics, it has a grid view. What can you do with a grid view? You can do single select fields and fill in information that way. So that's a very basic I want to start with something that, people are familiar with spreadsheets. And so that felt like a good starting point as well. And then here's another, I feel like where Airtable gets a little bit more powerful. Like you can group these to help, understand how many people you need to create different specialized meals for, and you can organize data in that way. And then thinking about, okay, now you can actually link records across tables and assign which food each of these persons should prepare. So kind of, again, trying to embed those Airtable concepts into these challenges in a playful way so that hopefully it's starting to spark ideas into people's minds of oh, okay, I didn't realize Airtable, these are the different capabilities of how data can be organized. And Airtable is helping me do that.
I was wondering, I was trying to think if you could actually embed the views, the form or the table itself, but you wouldn't be able to know when they've completed it. But in theory, you could at least embed the real, you could get a share view of a table or something to at least give the visual and the functionality, but you wouldn't be able to make it interactive like you have it.
Yeah, I feel like I think maybe in the podcast episode after the hackathon winners were announced, you guys had mentioned about the limits of being able to actually embed the real Airtable views on here. So I haven't tested that myself. Obviously, after the hackathon, I haven't worked on this. But if I were to continue working on it, I would be curious to really push to see how much closer to Airtable I could do. Or to your point, Dan, could I just even embed a screenshot or a link to a shared view that actually show them if you want to see what it actually looks like on Airtable, this is what it looks like. Because I think that is really the missing piece here. If I were really trying to introduce people into or familiarize them with Airtable.
You could put it in an iframe so it shows up there.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't be able to
interact with it.
It itself would be interactive, but you wouldn't know okay, they completed the grouping or whatever.
Yeah. You'd be able to do the challenges someone has edited the select field or submitted the form, but grouping and sorting, I don't know how you would be able to check for that.
Yeah.
Unless you have one of those bases that has, you remember 7 years ago or something like that? It might have been more 5 or 6, but Airtable released for a couple hours editable shared view links.
Yep.
And
That
then
was
they
an
were
interesting day, yeah.
Yeah. And then they're oopsies, that wasn't real, sorry.
Which is a little funny because we've kind of talked about before, there's several open source or not open source alternatives to Airtable. And one of them, I want to say Table, recently released editable shared links. And I was like, would you look at that? It was either Table or Base Row, one of those.
Interesting.
So funny.
Yeah, there's a benefit. I remember when I worked at IDEO, we wanted a shareable editable link. We were using Airtable as a way to collect designer profiles. And we wanted designers to be able to go and edit their availability or their skills or interests. We were kind of using it almost like their performance goal, input. And so we ended up using mini extensions as a third party to make that happen. But yeah, there's definitely pros and cons to editable.
Yeah. Mini extensions would certainly make it more secure. These shared links, it was just if anybody got a hold of it, they could edit the data in your base.
And you wouldn't know who did it because you don't have to even log in.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's.
Yeah. But it was literally they announced it, and then a couple hours later they were just kidding. We didn't mean to announce that. But that was silly.
And then the one last thing that I added here too was tips. So other than the challenges, another thing people can do is explore and find tips. And that's kind of a, seek and find situation where you can kind of hover over furniture to see which one pops up, and if you click on it, it gives you a little like insights, like here, these are other Airtable things that that exist that can help you, that you might be interested in learning more about. So that was the only other thing that I included in this game, and again, that's also in the database as well under the tips table, where this was tricky because I think initially I was trying to figure out how to tell Omni of how to assign a tip to a emoji, but sometimes I'm using multiple emojis. So then I had to create a key column to make it, very unique identifier. So I think there are a couple with couches. Yeah, Monica couch versus a Perk couch. That's kind of how Airtable Omni was able to figure out which tip lived in which location. But that's kind of the basic build. I can share a little bit about my experience of the challenges of using just Omni only versus using Claude to help really make the edits in the source code. But I'll pause there again to see if there's anything else that you guys would like for me to show you on the game itself.
Yeah, definitely. I'd also like if you show in the editor, just get people familiar with how you actually go into where the code goes, and how that works. Yeah.
Yes. So on the interface, there's just this one interface that's created. It's a custom interface. And then once you click on the custom interface element on the right side, there's that menu drop down here. You can download the source code or click edit source code, which this is where I would, if there was something really easy for me to edit, I realized that I could just go ahead and edit here. So that was really nice to kind of discover like, oh, I don't have to ask Omni if I wanted to change the emoji for a character. I can just do that myself. Or if I realized that there was a different, there's like those information tips that was embedded on the code, I could just go ahead and change there. But that was another thing that that was learning for me, of trying to figure out like how much of it should be hard coded in the code versus what should live in data. Like what are some things that I might want to be able to change or build on in the future. And so tips being one of those, and then like those challenges and missions, those are the things that I realized like, oh, I want them to live in a database and Omni to refer to that in the code rather than it being hard coded in the code. So that was another takeaway for me. But this is essentially whenever something went wrong or I want to do more granular, complex edits, I would just copy and paste or download the source code and then put it into Claude and be like, hey, here's the current source code. This is what I'm trying to do. Help update the source code, and they would update it, and then I would copy and paste it back into here and save the changes, and that would make those updates.
That's basically what I've landed on as well recently. That's like been my process.
Yeah.
It's worked well.
I haven't tried. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Camille.
I was just going to say something about Omni's coding that I'm not necessarily a fan of, is everything is a single file. So, I mean, in real life, if you were to code this, and even if you were to code this with a different AI, like Claude Code, it would build multiple files, which is kind of standard practice to compartmentalize certain like functions and features. It's easier to debug that way. With Omni, everything is one big old file, including the styling, I think. So I find it a little difficult to read oftentimes. But, it's all here. So it works.
That's insightful. I'm not a coder. So for me, this is what code looks like. So that's helpful to know that it's a different format. It has been helpful as I like create with those sketches too, Ali, that you were talking about in the recent LinkedIn series that I did of like turning sketches into custom interfaces. I would just copy this custom interface source code and give it to Claude to be like, refer to this as like your base reference of how Airtable codes their custom interfaces, because what I was discovering was when I was trying to make custom interfaces just using Claude initially, it would code in a way that when I paste it back in here, Airtable would have trouble reading it for some reason. And they don't know what's going on. So I would have to figure out what the differences are. And so it's been helpful to be able to refer to this style of coding. Again, not a coder. Can be please feel free to know more technical terms around it. Let me know. And then build the custom interface that I want to build on using the Airtable's language essentially. So I've used this code many times to reference to code of Claude to that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, as far as kind of what Camille was talking about, so there's this version where you're just doing it directly inside of Airtable, inside of their own editor, and then they have another layer that's a bit more technical and requires configuration and setup, where you can actually keep your code on your local machine and run it, and then you can actually deploy it as a component. And the benefit there is then it becomes reusable across different bases, and it has the better code structure where you can have multiple files and more kind of standardized. And that's usually if it's a more complex plugin or something that you want to be able to repurpose across bases.
I do find it a little odd that Omni's custom elements are not reusable. I mean, you can download the code and say, hey, Omni, here's some code, make this again. But that feels a little strange, because if you want to update it, then now you have multiple places that you have to go back and make those updates. And Airtable already has a built-in method of reusable custom elements. I do wonder the reasoning there of not letting them both be reusable.
My guess is a lot of this is probably hard-coded as far as the table names and everything, and it's probably not built in a generic way that could be repurposed.
If you go back, Lisa, to your code, what I did notice is the first, one of the first blocks, line 37 down, it's guessing what the tables might be and then making them settings still. So just in case you don't fill out the settings, it'll say, well, do you have a table that includes the word avatar? That's probably your avatar's table, and so on and so forth. So it's not necessarily, in this case, it's not necessarily hard coded, but it is a hard coded guess, if that makes sense. But I have seen other first, second, third passes with Omni where it's pick the first table in the base, and it's always going to be this table no matter what. And you're like, probably not. No, maybe that should be a configurable setting.
Right. Yeah. I've found one thing that has been frustrating for me, especially with this custom properties section, is and Lisa, I wonder if you've struggled with this as well, is it sometimes will be add a section that says should be allowed as a property of each of those custom properties, and it only puts in certain field types. So if I have a lookup of a number field or a lookup of a single select field, it assumes that it's a single select field, and then it puts that, hard codes that value into the line, and then I can't even pick my actual lookup field from the dropdown unless I go and add it to that list of allowed types.
I ran into this with a client yesterday, literally yesterday, of it should have allowed for a date field or a formula that outputs a date. And there's an extra hoop you got to jump through for quite a few field types if you want to include lookups, rollups, and formulas in the equation. Even create a time, because that's a date, but it's not. It's a different field type.
Exactly.
Yeah, you guys are clearly more literate in coding than I am. I haven't even looked at this entire thing. I would just always copy and paste it to Claude, and I'll tell them change the colors of this, and then I don't check the work of Claude. I just paste it back in here. That is something that I thought this edit mode was going to let me do, was once I paste the new code, that it would kind of show me the preview on the right of what I changed, but I would have to save the change, commit to the changes beforehand. So that was a little bit scary if I was making a little bit more of a larger change. Then I would have to remember like to save the old code and know like what I've changed since then. But that's
Right.
yeah.
There's a history. If you hit this exit button and then go click on those 3 little dots again, there's that history. If you click any one of those, it will roll you back. It works differently than snapshots do in a base, where as a snapshot would create a copy of your base. This actually rolls back the actual element that you're looking at to that code at that time. What I'm really missing is the ability to, when you save, add a little note to be like, this is the time I changed this. This is the time I changed that.
Let's observe these revision history times, actually, if you don't mind, because how are you supposed to know which one of these is the one to keep?
Yeah.
Some of these are minutes apart.
Yeah.
Right.
One of them is 7:20 a.m. and one is 7:21 a.m. Good luck.
Yeah. Is there, Ellie, you mentioned a note. You just meant like on a separate place, write a note?
Well, what you could do, one thing you could do is write in the comments of the code. When you copy it from Claude, or you could even ask Claude to do it for you. Say, when you give this back to me, write in the comments at the top of the code what changed between this and the last. But what I'm missing from Airtable is the ability to, like, when you mouse over one of those times, it says version 59, version 58.
Yeah.
You should be able to give it a little note or a little name yourself when you hit save. That would be really helpful.
Once again, I'm begging Airtable to just use Git behavior, the industry standard, which I don't know necessarily if it forces you to. I think it depends on your Git provider or your Git methodology, but you oftentimes include what's called a commit message, which is, as Ali is describing, a little note that says what happened, what changed. That would be nice.
Yeah, it would.
Yeah.
Someday, maybe.
Especially, actually, now that I think about it, especially with the Omni-focused custom elements, because most of the time, your versions are going to come from a prompt. Include what the prompt was. At the very least. You manually making edits, yes, it would be nice if you could manually put in your little commit message, but you know what the prompt was. Slide that in there.
Agreed.
Yeah. True. So Lisa, what are your key takeaways, having gone from never writing code to now using Omni and Claude to do this? What are lessons learned?
I think my biggest takeaway with this game creation was, one, always start with building out, build out the database first. So for Omni to build off of, have something for Omni to refer to. That makes it just so much more cleaner. You have more control. I think the biggest challenge I was facing before with Omni just creating everything was there were just sometimes a lot of fields I didn't need that Omni thought that I would need, and then I was afraid to delete them because I didn't know how they connected to the interface. And then really like knowing the strengths of Omni versus Claude, knowing when to use which AI to help with changing the code or the design of the custom interface, and kind of relying on, for me at least, relying on both to make those updates to get to the best design as possible. I think were a couple of my key, and then like honestly, having this hackathon too was a helpful reminder of you can just build things without being asked to build things for someone else. Like Airtable is, especially with Omni, there's no like credit limits. You can speak with it all night and I don't think you're gonna run out of any like tokens that'll shut you out. So it was just such a safe and fun place to just explore. And I have like 50 bases now in my workspace. It's just trying to like explore what I can make with Omni and the custom interfaces. So it's been really nice to take this time during my leave of like, I'm just going to start building because I can. Airtable allows me to do that. It's a safe space for it. Omni has these unlimited possibilities. And so that's like an advice I've been giving myself, and that I hope to share with others, of just start building anything that you can think of. and see where it takes you.
Yeah. I'd be curious, at what point do people switch over to say, I'm just going to build all my new interfaces in Omni versus using the interface builder? I don't think either of you are there yet, right? Where you're not, so you still default to Airtable interfaces?
Yeah, for the most part, the Airtable interface, like standard options, I'll call them, are sufficient. There are times where, like, specifically with things like a chart element, sometimes I want to do something a little bit different. But it hasn't really come up so much for me that I'm like, yeah, it's time to build a custom interface. By the time I'm getting to that point, I'm like, maybe the UI shouldn't be Airtable and maybe it should be something else. So I kind of go back and forth about when is it the right time to stay in Airtable, but use some of the more like advanced features, if you will.
Yeah, makes sense. Cool. Well, thank you, Lisa, for coming on. Appreciate it. It was awesome. Got some people watching here. I'll put there on. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and then before we end, I forgot to mention at the beginning of the show, one of our regulars that's been on the show, Scott Rose. I promised him I'd give a shout out. So, community member, you'll see him all over answering questions. He wrote a book and wanted to promote his book, and he's doing a raffle today. So anybody that purchases the ebook, which is I think just 99 cents, he'll put your name in for a raffle for a $100 Amazon card. So I'm going to post the link here on the chat for people. So congrats to Scott on that. I know he's put a lot of time and effort into that. A little bit outside of Airtable. I'm sure he used Airtable to aggregate all his notes and for writing it. But so yeah, shout out for Scott on that.
The book is called Saving Larry's Hairline, a comedy about losing it all.
That's right. Yep. So that's good. Awesome. Well, thank you, Lisa, again for joining us, and for your son for joining us as well. And enjoy your maternity leave. Glad you had some time to spend with us, and we'll be back next week. Have a great week, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining today's episode. We hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to check out our sponsor, OntoAir Backups, automated backups for Airtable. We'll see you next time on the Built on Air podcast.